Hey everybody, I'm here with the other timelines um, from other cities, Alabama and Canada. Two different countries, two different cities. How are you guys? Welcome to the show.
Good.
And thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I know in the past, we tried to do this, and I apologize to you and all our viewers. I had some health issues, but I really appreciate everybody being patient with me. But I'd really like to get to know about your release on Double Crown with Sean. Um, I listened to those songs, man, and they're there's a great mix. There's like I don't know. Why don't you tell me about the different sort of influences and genres you kind of touched on and kind of painted the canvas with?
Yeah, I guess I can start there. I mean, we've been on Double Crown for almost 10 years now, believe it or not. Started like the first release we did was an EP back in 2015, and that was before Jim was in the band. It was me and my wife Hollis, who plays keyboards, and I was just kind of recording, just working on projects, Postman or Astroman. Just want, as a musician, you just want to stay busy, and
Yeah.
if you don't play and work on things, then your life is kind of boring then. So, and I'm up here in Vancouver, BC. Sean is down in Bellingham, Washington, which is about 45 minutes for me across the border. He's pretty close, and I've worked with him before. In one of my old bands, Johnny and the Shaman, we had been on some compilations and some issues of the Continental back in the '90s and early 2000s, and working on music. You don't want to just do everything yourself. You always want some other party involved. Because otherwise you don't know if it's any good or not. It's like I could tell myself it's good, or as I usually do, tell myself it's bad, but you never really have an idea until somebody else is there to kind of give you a yes or a no, or yep, that's great, or that sucks. So and I knew Sean was a bass player, so I was like, yeah, I'll ask Sean if he wants to just do some recording with me on this. So he plays bass on the first EP we released. He released it on Double Crown. That was 4 songs. We did a 7-inch vinyl and a cassette version and a CD. So kind of went all out with that.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And then, I had all these other songs that I kind of just played with for years, honestly. And, life gets in the way. Um, and I'm very slow to work if I'm in control of myself. So I didn't get a lot done. I just had basically, 2 albums worth of demos essentially, until I finally got Jim involved. And Jim and I mean, we've been best friends since the '90s, since we met. And I'll let Jim tell the story of the night we met here in a few minutes, because he tells it a lot better than I do. But yeah, Jim had been kind of working a bit on his own as well. And he recorded this song under the name Surf Wolf. Uh, that was going to be on one of the Continental magazine compilations, and I think I offered, or either you asked, I don't recall, but I was like, yeah, I can work on some drums and mixing and stuff for you if you want to make it sound as good as possible. And so we did that, and it worked out really well, because the technology is finally at a point to where you don't have to be in the same room at $1 million recording studio to make something that's pretty good these days. So after that, I just started thinking, well, I really want to get other timelines up and running, and it just feels like a waste to have all these great songs and not really have the energy to make anything out of them. So I asked him if he wanted to, work on it. And at first, he wasn't sure. I think he thought that he didn't want to get involved because he thought he might mess it up. He might it sound worse.
I have messed it up.
Yeah. Well, you know, in a good
Bad
way.
you hear is my part.
But yeah, so got him involved. So, you know, we work on tracks back and forth and it works out really well. And once Jim is involved, he's a really good motivator as well. So it just started moving fast, man. And now we're putting out these series of 2 song singles, you know, in really quick progression, leading up to a full length 12-inch CD, all of that stuff next summer. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at now, and yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and thankfully the tech allows us to get it done without having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars in travel.
Yeah. One of the great things about that is what you mentioned about Man or Astroman. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the band off and on since '97 or so. I was originally, you know, back in, I guess my first surf band was in the '90s. I had a band called Johnny and the Shaman. Put out a couple of albums and some 7 inches. We did a split with Man or Astroman back in the day as well. And then they had a clone project that they were going to send around back in '97, '98. And I had worked with Bird Stuff, Brian Teasley. He had produced the second Johnny and the Shaman album. And he asked me if I wanted to play guitar in that band. So I was the Star Crunch clone in Man or Astroman Clone Project Alpha. And that was great. That was like I was just a kid. I was 19 or 20, getting to tour around the US and go places I've never gone before, which is just a crazy experience, you know, sold out shows every night for somebody my age. It certainly gets you spoiled. So did that. And then, you know, things went, you know, life continued on, had Johnny and the Shaman. Then Brian and I met up in Atlanta. We were both living there in the, you know, 2001 or so. And Man or Astroman had just gone on hiatus. And we were playing together, getting a band together. And so we started this band called Sound of Humans with me, him, another lady, Andrea, who runs Sims, which is Coalition of Independent Music Stores. They do all the record store day releases. And my wife, before she was my wife at the time, Hollis, she played keyboards in that band as well. So we were in that band and, you know, recorded an album's worth of stuff. Never released it until much after we broke up. But that's where Jim and I sort of met back up in Birmingham. And moved up here back in 2009. And then Man or Astroman was getting back together. And then I got asked to play rhythm guitar in the real band. So I did that for a couple years. Stopped for a while because I was in a coma after a West Coast tour. So yeah, we toured the West Coast. Started feeling sick around Portland, Bellingham. I barely remember. And the next day I was in the hospital back home in a coma for a week. And so that was pretty rough. So luckily they found somebody else really great to take my place, which is Ivana Nova, and she's awesome. So she's much better than I was at that part, I'm sure. But I've done a few, you know, fill-in shows between now and then as well. So I'm sort of like the pinch hitter. So yeah, it's pretty cool, you know, that they were always my favorite band when I was a kid, and getting to play in that band and have a relationship with them it's always been great. And of course, like, huge influence on us. I mean, if you listen to us, you can hear it. There's no way to hide it, but yeah, that's fine. I was in the band. I got a good excuse, I think.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the whole Man or Astroman part of it.
What about Jim? Tell me your story, Jim. How did this all come to be? You know, what were you doing and thinking about in 2015?
Oh God, in 2015, I don't know. But I tend to get long-winded, so I'm going to try to be short.
I know, done. Just do your thing.
But yeah, Johnny and I, because I was actually thinking about it, like the dates. I believe it was the summer of 1997, I think. when Johnny and I met. So we were like 18, 19 years old. Um, I think that's it. But anyway, I had started a band with another kid, another guy named Jeff Wilson, um, and so anyway, we had a band called the Mystery Men, and
Oh,
um, yeah, well, it's a different Mystery Men now, but
oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's
All
not the
right.
same thing. Yeah, no, we were really good friends with the Penetrators, and we played a lot of shows with the Penetrators. And anyway, there was like a tour called Safari USA, and there were a lot of bands, and I think it was the Chucker in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and so anyway, I mean, knowing the Penetrators and having done shows with them, and I was friends with Rip Thrilby, who was that was his name, stage name. Uh, Scott and Brian Rogers, the brothers. But anyway, I remember that when we showed up, to play the first show there at the Chucker, Johnny and Dano and Garrett, the other two members of Johnny the Shaman. I remember like we came up to do like gear load in, and there was Johnny and I mean there was a lot of people just everywhere. It was kind of crazy, and uh, Johnny was, I don't know if he'll appreciate me saying this or not. He's kind of like quiet, shy. He was like kind of quiet and reserved to himself a little. But he came up and we were talking. He's like, yeah, we're from Mobile, Alabama, and so anyway, he said, would you guys? It was kind of funny because there were a lot of people there, and so we were all kind of like sorting to get like we actually wanted to play closer to the front of the show to make sure there were going to be a lot of people there. And so Johnny he says, "Man, do you guys care if we go first? Because we need to get back to Mobile or whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, it was just fine with me or whatever," because I didn't know the order. It didn't matter, but I was like, um, and so anyway, so there's Johnny and Daniel. And I've spoken to Daniel and Garrett, and so they got up there, and and I just remember, like, my God, they like just blew the doors off the back of the place, and I was like, I'm so glad we get to follow this, because I was like, that was like the worst decision of my life. Like, we're gonna follow that now. And so anyway, and then after that, Johnny and I we stayed in touch and just through emails and whatnot, and we played shows together. And the Mystery Men, went on for a while. We put out a thing on a couple different labels, singles and whatnot. And and then when it put out one, but I actually changed the name. It was with a Blood Red Vinyl and Discs in Northwest. I'm not sure if they're still around, but Jeff Martin was the guy's name. He was very nice. And anyway, and so yeah, just like Johnny said, we continued to stay in touch, and even whenever uh, his other band with Brian, he'd email and say, "Hey, we're going to be in Birmingham, come out," over. And then it turns out Johnny and I only lived a couple of miles from one another, and so we've just, and like I said, I don't know, Johnny's much younger than I am, but I'm 47 now, and I mean, so Johnny and I, like I said, almost 30 years, I guess. If and Johnny and I won't go into it, and I hope Johnny will not either. But we've played shows together, in bands with Bird Stuff, Brian from Enter Astro Man. And so anyway, and just to bring it to now, yeah, Johnny, he was like, "Hey, do you want to work on this with me?" And he's right. At first I was like, "I'll probably mess it up, Johnny. I don't think, I don't think, like, because Johnny is he's a great guitarist. And he's a great, songwriter. He has really good, to me, full ideas when he brings it, and he's always like, well, well, what do you think? Or here, why don't you think about doing something different here or change this up? And in my mind, I'm always I mean, because Johnny is right. And maybe it's because we're older too. I guess in the songwriting process, anybody who's ever been in a band or in the songwriting process, at least in my experience, I think when you have an idea, it's just a natural, it's not a bad thing, but it's a natural part of your ego to think this is the way
Yeah.
and you do this or this is the way it's going to sound. And if somebody infringes on that idea, that's when there starts to be, I think, issues. And Johnny is genuinely the opposite of that. He's like, no, no, why don't you come up with something right here? And that's very difficult and emotionally taxing for me because I feel like I'm going to mess it up, and I do. And Johnny's like, no, it's great. And so anyway, that's,
That's awesome. It's incredible backstory and the relationship you had since you were young teenagers, your formative years when you may have only been playing guitar 3 or 4 years, and like you're still learning, you're still finding new music, and like here you are playing these great shows and getting involved.
yeah. And I mean, and two, that was another thing because in Johnny's, which I don't want to speak for Johnny, but Johnny's got really good taste in music and it's a very broad, spectrum of things. And I, and I like a lot of different music. Um, I tend to be like, I'm a huge fan of, like the Phantom Surfers and I mean, it just so happens to be like I love the Trash Women, you know, uh, and in Mystery Men, we would play some of their songs live. The Neptunas are great. I think right now the Suffragettes are just, killing it.
Yeah.
And they're just, I mean, so in the Suffragettes are a little different from like Phantom Surfers and like the Trash Women. But I kind of like the louder, clankier stuff, and uh, and I'm also a big fan of like Davy Allen, the Arrows, and um, and so I don't know. I guess sometimes I think I worry. I'm like, well, I don't know because I hear Johnny's music so differently, and I want to, but I kind of can't help but play like, what. Whenever you hear anything that I've written, I hope whenever anybody hears it and they don't know who it is, I hope they're like thinking, oh my God, what happened to the Phantom Surfers? They used to be good, and so.
Oh,
So,
wow. So this is going to air in February. So tell me where you guys are going to be at band wise in February. Like what do you have planned for this winter?
Well, by February, we will hopefully have the rest of these releases done. So we're finishing up Double Shot Volume 3 right now. I would love to get 4 out by the end of the year, so by the end of December, and then 5, which will be the last one by hopefully the end of February. And then it's just working on the rest of the songs that are going to go on the 12-inch. So yeah, just staying busy, doing as much as we possibly can in the time that we have.
Awesome, awesome. Are any of the songs in the Bloodshot series going to be on the full length?
Yeah, so the Double Shot series is we don't call them singles because when you think of a single, then one song's an A side and one song's a B side.
Right.
And I've done enough B sides in my life, so I don't do B sides anymore. So on each of these, like we've got 2 A sides, right? So there'll be 5 of those. So that's 10 tracks, and then another 4 to 6 that will not have been previously released. So basically, they're just kind of lead ups to the full length. And the reason I did this, it's actually like something that I have really hated the last few years, is where an artist will have a new album coming out and it's coming out in 3 or 4 months. And then they just like release one song from it up to the release. And by the time the album comes out, you've already heard half of it. And I'm like, Jesus, man, this is like terrible. This is not how it should be. But, you know, it's not the 90s anymore, man. And, you know, just things are different. And so that's why I decided to do it this way. The other reason to do it this way is that it gives us a constant goal to work towards.
Yeah.
It's a lot less stressful to do 2 songs at a time than it is to think about a whole batch of 14 or 16.
Yeah.
So work-wise, man, I think it's the best thing that I've done, even though I hate the general idea of not just dropping a whole album and there it is. I gotta wrap my head around the way kids listen to music these days. so yeah, you know, it'll be, you know, a good chunk previously released, but a good chunk new as well. But remember, these are all digital, so there's not going to be anything physical until the full length comes out anyway.
Oh.
So yeah, hopefully people like it.
So that's the treat. Like, you know, hey, we're giving you partial album digitally, but when you get that thing you hold in your hands, then you get the real deal. You get it all.
Yeah, exactly. And really, it's not any different than anybody else releasing an album and you hearing all the song, or, you know, half the songs beforehand anyway. We're just doing it in a different way. And I love that, you know, we had Scott Seguchi is doing all the artwork and he's amazing. And so basically each one is essentially the same artwork with a different color palette and slightly different character in the middle. So they all look really good as a set, which I think is great. And then I don't know what we're gonna do for the full length artwork, but I think these 5 double shots, they look really cool when you look at the artwork all beside each other. I kind of wish that like we could do 5 7-inch releases of them, but you know, there's no money in surf rock, so we're not gonna do that.
part of my my mission is to help that change, you know, and I'm sure, you know, when the 90s surf scene exploded, nobody was expecting that to happen.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you go to see Pulp Fiction, you hear that first song, you hear Miserlou, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this. But because the soundtrack had so much, you know, I'm sure it meant a lot to you and your musician type friends, like your fledgling music career.
Oh yeah, I mean that movie alone, that soundtrack was really what kind of started the zeitgeist of the comeback of surf rock. So man, what a great time to have a band like that. And you know, that kind of stuff is unpredictable. It's just like you know, anything else that goes viral these days, it's the same kind of idea. You can't make it happen. It just comes out of nowhere, and who knows what's next. You know, we can all hope for, you know, a big comeback of this kind of music, but you know, there's no way to make it happen. All we can do is do our part and do cool stuff. And you know, there's always going to be people that seek it out and that love it. So, you know, that's all I care about. I don't, you know, I don't look for, you know, this to become some giant thing again. If it did, cool. But then we're also kind of old anyway, so it's gonna be a younger generation that does that anyway. So more power to them, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, just, you know, do what you love to do. This is what Jim and I have always done. We've just always been making this music. So we are very well schooled in it. And I think, you know, at this age, we're very well set up to try to make good music. I hope it is. Again, like, you know, with me, I do it. I think it sounds all right. I probably, you know, I don't know. I assume people might not like it, or, you know, I don't like it, but that's why I got, you know, somebody else involved to tell me yeah, it's good or no, it's bad. And yeah, you know, it's fun. That's the big reason for us to do it is just a lot of fun. It's a great way to spend your time versus whatever people our age do. What do people our age do?
Don't they play Words with Friends still?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Crush. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I spend enough time on screens. It's nice to not be doing that sometimes and be working on an actual artistic project. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All gives you a sense of, accomplishment.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, before we go, I just want to give you a chance to maybe mention something or say something I haven't asked about, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, you know, we're just go listen to the albums. They're on every streaming service. Go to Bandcamp, get it on Bandcamp. Go to Facebook, like the Facebook, like the Instagram. That's kind of all we got for now. You know, that's where you're going to get all the news is from those sources, and anybody that whether they stream a song or buy a song, we appreciate it. Yeah.
Jim?
No, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much, guys, for always with your patience and between the two of you and your locations and the scheduling, being very accommodating to me. And I know the viewers are gonna they're gonna love the tunes. Because I heard it, I'm like, all right, these guys aren't messing around. And then when Johnny was telling me how long you two have been friends and like you grew up in kind of the same circles, I'm like, oh, okay, this is like a really solid thing they're doing.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. And we're so glad that you asked us to do this. I know Jim's been talking about wanting to be involved in this for a while, so it was really exciting when you sent that email to us. I was like, Jim, your day's finally come, man.
Yeah. I like to watch your show, Ryan, or your interviews. Yeah. I really appreciate what you do.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was during COVID. I told my wife, I said she was still working from home, but my office wouldn't let us come in. So I was kind of stuck at home, and I'm like, um, hey, what do you think of this new Bayside album or this new um metal band's COVID live album? Like, what do you think of that? And she was like, eh. I'm thinking, sorry. So I need to find people that I can talk to music, talk about music with, and you know, there's so many ingredients that go in with surf music that seems like the most fun for me to talk about.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're doing it. And by the way, congratulations! I saw that you've done your 1,000th video now. That
Yeah,
is insane.
yeah.
So, man, you're putting in the good work, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I said to my wife the other day, I said, I don't know if it's an accomplishment or it's like a sad old band.
Well, that's how we feel too about everything we do.
All right, guys. Well,
Get my coffee.
you have a great rest of your day.
All right, man. Take care.
Yeah.